All right, thank you so much. The program still this one on ITV, and I told you that we're going to be looking at a very, very ugly phenomenon this morning in elections, most especially elections in Nigeria. We're talking about voters' apathy. Yes, if you go through the Merriam-Webster dictionary or you check the Wikipedia, you will simply find voter apathy. In the first place, you'll find apathy as a word in the English lexicon that simply means lack of interest, lack of emotional interest, lack of concern, and of course, lack of being interested in something. Then, if you stretch it further, you discover that we're actually talking about mass participation in issues. Then also, if you stretch it further too, we're talking about electoral participation. Here in Nigeria, it's been a very ugly situation, and we felt it as a kind of a thing of responsibility to bring it on board this morning on our program this morning on ITV. In 2015 presidential election, it was said that the issue of voter apathy also crept in, and that reduced the amount of maybe the number of results that we had in various constituencies in the country. Well, to look at the issue of voters' apathy this morning, we are so privileged to have Nuruddin Asulugi. He's an Islamic scholar and, of course, a public affairs analyst and also a political analyst. So you're welcome to this program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewers.
Okay. And all right, so let's just keep the ball rolling. When we say voters' apathy, from your point of view, what exactly are we talking about?
Well, like you attempted to define it, it simply shows lack of enthusiasm, lack of interest on the part of those who were supposed to play a participatory role in bringing about a new government. Those who should have been active, so to speak, haven't met the fundamental qualification. You register and stuff like that to vote during election. These persons become uninterested. They stay away from participating in the actual process of electing people into office.
Okay, so what are the reasons for voter apathy now?
Well, a number of the reasons could be legion. You see, in an ideal setting, democracy was supposed to defy elitic interest while promoting the interest of the collective. But that is not what you find in reality. And so people get enthusiastic about the entire issue of election when you look at all of the process that would precede the actual election. Take the primaries, for example. You and I do not get to decide who becomes the candidate of a particular party. And so you ask the question, if what is no longer mere speculation, if someone who had participated as a delegate in the selection of a particular candidate for a particular party returned to his constituent and was spending tens of millions of naira in empowering and, never palliated the provenance of that wealth, saying that this was what I got as a result. And in fact, before going, he had made a plight that please let me go. In other words, he was so sure of that particular outcome that if I go, wow, I was going to make some good money. And he came back. Why not telling us exactly how much he made, but the quantum of the amount of money that he had spent so far? It may not represent the totality of all that he got. But even if that was what he got in the selection of that candidate, then I will be left to ask the question, what is the utilitarian value of that particular candidate when he ultimately comes to the saddle of power? Whose interest would he represent? Was that an investment? Does he intend to recoup? So to what extent will he represent the collective aspiration of the people? And so, initially, even before the election proper, a problem is already, a state of mind is already created. That state of mind is that this particular process is most likely to accentuate the state of despondency, the state of hopelessness, the state of poverty, the state of hunger. And once all of these things are there, what you get in superfluity is despair. And when people become despair, the very first casualty is enthusiasm that goes. It annihilates the urge, the desire to want to participate. You say, well, why should I go and vote, for example, if I have to queue? The one who perhaps acted as a delegate was kept in a very comfortable environment, ate the best of food, was being wooed, was being, so why should I, for example, come out, queue, take all of the risk that I would take
just to cast a
vote for who? And I return home. If I were to go, even if I'm allowed to drive to that place, I will naturally have to buy fuel. I will spend a whole lot of, so why not just relax at home and just let what will be to be? Okay. These are some of the elements or factors that drive. Then you have the issue of lack of understanding, lack of appreciation of the danger of staying away. And of course, this is a global phenomenon, because in 2016, for example, less than 55% of those who were registered voters in America voted. But in society where you find government had positively engaged the people, the rate of participation is very high.
All right, Nuruddin, when we look at voters' apathy, particularly as it relates to Nigeria, just like what you are trying to explain now, that it may be a kind of a direct reaction to the outcome of how aspirants become candidates in various parties. But also, if we stretch our mind further, all the political parties cannot have wrong candidates. There are some political parties that maybe somehow they will make the people's choice. They will make a choice that will be appealing to the electorates in a larger spectrum now. Now, the question that we now ask, do we believe, or that I ask you here, votes in Nigeria, do they count?
Well, you see, if you, for example, want the votes to count, they will count only to the extent to which you believe in the process. They will count only to the extent, you see, when I, for example, stay away and I do not go to cast my vote, what I have done is to incentivize the possibility of the process being compromised. Because if I come out to vote, a message is communicated that this person is interested. I'll give you one clear example. When the American electorate became tired, for whatever reason, they couldn't take what they classify, quote and unquote, as the rubbish, the stench that was coming from Trump. You had the kind of participation in that election such that for decades had never happened. That process made it practically impossible for any one person who would have wanted to manipulate the process to do so. So if you talk about all of the parties, yes, there are parties that are unknown that may have the best of candidates. But the unfortunate thing is that here, if I have a feeling, oh, it's either this party or that party that are known, that will make the difference in terms of election, and I stay away.
It then probably means that the electorate, they themselves, they have a problem. Because they are privileged to have, numerous political parties. So how come the electorate, they probably still believe in very limited number of parties? This
is what I'm saying, that a problem is already being created. Dealing with a mindset is a very difficult thing. If you go to the United States of America that had had democratic experience for over 2 centuries, no matter how good the independent candidate is, he ends up not winning because it's an unknown quantity. No person wants to identify with a name outside these 2 names, either it's the Republican or the Democrat. Of course, when they come on board, the policy as it relates to the generality of the public is one and the same thing. So you find that a very good independent candidate, for example, whose credentials are not contestable, still will not win an election because someone is asking. Again, it has to do with the quality and the quantum of the electoral education that the populace has.
Okay, now, so is it now healthy for our democracy, voters' apathy? Is it healthy for our democracy?
It certainly cannot be healthy. It can't be healthy because what that provides, take the last presidential election. less than 60, less than 50% or so, or those who registered were those who came out to vote. What that did was that you gave opportunity to insignificant number to decide who determines your economic policy, your health policy, your educational policy, and all of those things that are critical to your survival as a human being. And that is the price we all are paying today.
Okay. Now, analysts have said that voter apathy in Nigeria seems to be more prevalent in some regions, if you like now. Let's say it's more in the south compared to the way we have it in the north. And somehow it is, you know, controversial. Controversial in the sense that some persons will tell you that voter education seems to be more, you know, in some certain region compared to others. And yet you still have disturbingly voter apathy in regions where you have voter education more. What is responsible?
Well, you see, if you look at even the present scenario, the way it plays itself out, there is the tendency on the part of a group to be more protective. There's this survival instinct which is being created in the minds of a number of persons. They don't like us. They hate us. And so the only thing that we require to survive is that we must bind together as a group. And so when you have that kind of mentality, you have that kind of force that drives a particular process, you get the kind of result you get there differently from what you get from a place where we are increasingly individualistic, where we are, you know, egoistic, and where it is either that I get it or nobody else. And so beyond the issue of the quality or the quantity of education that you get is the fact that there are people who have worked towards becoming monolithic and work within the context of that reality, as opposed to people. Again, if you look at even our colonial experience, how come that through what you refer to as the indirect rule, there was cohesion, you had effective governance, you had a structure that the people who came did not want to torpedo. That culture fitted into whatever it was they wanted to do. Unlike when you come down south, where you had individual enclaves, you had empires wanting to become a big fish in a small river rather than to become a fish at all in a river where you have sufficient space to navigate. So these are some of the challenges that we have. And in the north, for example, you find that once it comes to the issue of election, it is an issue that is taken seriously, because these are persons who have come to understand what power is. And they appreciate the fact that he who exercises political authority has control over every other issue.
Certainly. So do you think the government is doing enough to sensitize the people?
It's not in the interest of government to have people sensitized. Do not forget that democracy is defined as government for the people, by the people, and for the people, and stuff like that. But that is in an ideal setting. The government represents a class. And so it is that class that must continually survive. It is that class interest that is projected above the interest of the generality of the people. So whatever piece of information that will be given that will tend to strengthen, to empower the generality of the people at the detriment of government, you do not expect that that kind of information will be passed. So it is not a business. Once they have appreciated democracy to mean that I become president by simple majority. And so who cares whether 10 million Nigerians registered and only 500,000 came out to vote?
And talking about government, I think there are government agencies, you know, the National Orientation Agency is there to reorientate the people about elections, and of course the importance of election, you may want to say. So it may be, like some persons will put it, that this agency may not be up and doing enough. Perhaps that's just a talk for another day. But let's look at the danger, though you have tried to analyze it a while ago, the danger of voter apathy when, you know, legitimate voters, legitimate electorate now just have this feeling towards election. What are the dangers?
Well, the dangers are legion, enormous. If you stay away from an election, particularly when you are in a position to do all of the right analysis. Some of us will do all of those analyses, but when it is time for vote, you say, hey, please, I'm not going. I'm not going. The danger, of course, is that the wrong persons will continue to be at the saddle of leadership. And once you have decapitated leadership at whatever level of governance, you can be sure that every other thing will cascade in the direction that is negative. And that obviously is the price that we are paying as a people today.
You're talking about price to be paid. Is it difficult now to stop voters' apathy? Is it very difficult?
It's not a thing you say, yeah, you can stanch that. How do you stanch it? You do that, of course, by continuous enlightenment. But again, those who occupy the political space are critical in creating the required enthusiasm for people to want to vote. Because if you get the feeling that when I vote, what difference does it make? Policies are made that are not beneficial, either in education, in health, in everything. You say they are not beneficial. So why do I waste my time to participate in putting people there? So I get some fulfillment. Even if the wrong policies are executed, that, oh, I didn't have a hand in putting them there. So I find consolation in this fact. You can only get participatory fulfillment when those persons you have put in position of authority do exactly what they said they were going to do, for which you put them there.
Through their campaigns.
We will need those who occupy the present political space to do that, which will provide all of the kind of encouragement that people will need. If you were to go to states like Zamfara, for example, you find that because of what the man who presently occupies the seat of authority there does, virtually everybody will be waiting for the day that will be the gubernatorial election to say, I want to participate, because they are beginning to see what it is, the difference it makes when someone who is in position of authority represents exactly what he said he was going to do if he gets there. And so that provides a kind of encouragement. The people are itching and say, oh, fine, let this time come, I will just be there. Yes, whether I'm there or not, it will not make any difference because I know he already would win, but I still want to be there to register the fact that I am deeply appreciative of what this man has done. That is a kind of atmosphere, a kind of mindset that is created on account of the activities of the person who occupies that political space.
Okay, to the big one now, how can we begin to disabuse our minds against voter apathy, if you like, in Nigeria?
Yeah, we could begin to do that by what we are doing now. We're beginning to get to talk to the critical mass, particularly those persons from the southern part of this country, the south in particular. We are very active in the domain of talking, but when it comes to area of action, we are very lean. It is for us to begin to appreciate that it does not matter how critical we are about who presently occupies a position, the scenario or the status quo isn't going to change until we play a participatory role. Every 4 years we have an opportunity, and we can begin to interrogate the outcome of all of the processes that we get involved in. If I, for example, participated in electing a particular government, and after 4 years that government didn't do well, I don't become disenchanted. All I need to do is to say, yes, I didn't get it well. I got deceived by X, Y, Z factors that I had looked at. Now I can see much clearer. Let me experiment. By the time the individual begins to become aware that people will ultimately play a role. And of course, you look at a candidate and you could make a statement with that candidate, whether he wins an election or he does not win an election. But he could send the right message. If there's a particular candidate who is in a party that is unknown, you can begin to make that party known by the activities, of course, get the party honored by the nativity or membership of that party of a particular candidate that you think this candidate has the requisite. It's not a moral cripple, it's not a cerebral destitute, and it's not a kleptomania, one who, when he has access to resources, he will peculate the collective patrimony of the people. Once we begin to make all of those statements, all the parties that sell their candidacy to the highest bidder would go back and do a rethink. And even those who want to expend money will begin to say, oh, we are dealing with an enlightened populace, a populace that is refined, a populace that, regardless of what we spend at the party level to win the ticket of our political party, when we come to the electorate, because they will not have sufficient, even if they were to give one naira, $1 to all of those who will come. If, for example, INEC says we have close to 50-something or 80-something million voters, where would the fellow get the money? And I mean, what would be the anticipation of the person? How does the person intend? And again, when you participate, you see, the beauty of the participation is that at local level, at club level, we are interested in interrogating leadership when it comes to how the finances are spent. But because we have this attitude, we have luxated ourselves from the political process, we just do not care what the money is and how the money is spent, because we do not feel that we have a stake in that whatever. But if we participated in the enthronement of a particular government, it's like the club. So you become interested in how that club works, how that government works, how the leadership becomes accountable, and of course the leadership will naturally become accountable. So the area of duplicity would have been narrowed if everybody gets involved, because they know that in the next election, if we do not do what is right, you can't succeed in deceiving people some of the time, but not all of the time. And so once you know that you will be confronted with all of this difficulty, those who occupy position of leadership will naturally sit up and do the right thing for the society.
Talking about having a stake in the electoral process, Karina, what are the process that should be put on the ground to encourage large turnouts in elections?
Yeah, we can have a large turnout in election by, first and foremost, us pressing on those persons who are representatives at the legislative arm of government to come up with a healthy electoral process that enables us, including civil society that will be transparent, to monitor the selection process of candidates. For example, once we have sufficient proof that a particular candidate got the ticket of his party on the basis of compromising, because once the foundation, because you know that is it's like the foundation. Once the foundation is defective, you can be sure that the entire structure will be defective. Certainly. Once we have all of that, and people can, as individuals, approach the court to say that this person is a moral cripple because he got this process by compromising all of those who were delegates and therefore should be disqualified. Once we enlarge the scope of participation of the ordinary person, you can be sure that we will have a saner ambience to conduct our political affair, and people who in this process get encouraged. This encouragement, the state of despair, is a consequence or a function of the fact that the party will just come with anybody. You know, we don't control the party. They could just sit down and say it is consensus. How they arrive at that consensus, of course, will be the issue of arm twisting. You know, if I preside in this sitting and I say you will not talk until this meeting ends, you are not going to talk. Yeah. Because even if you raise your hand a trillion times, I'm not saying that hand. And you become unruly, one who is uncivilized, one who is immature to participate in the process, if you were going to insist that you will talk regardless of the fact whether you were recognized or not. And so there are subtle ways by which you could get asphyxiated. And we must create an enabling environment for people who do not be members of a political party but become a stakeholder to say, hey, if you are going to bring people for us to select, we must be interested in the hygiene of your political process in order that you do not give us what will serve us as a Thursday. Because if all of the parties, for example, throw up candidates tomorrow who are moral lepers, moral cadavers, who have no choice to say which is the most tolerable. Which is the most tolerable? And the most tolerable may not necessarily make our situation better than what we are now. May not be in the position to tweak the present state of economic despair, the present state of hopelessness, may not be in a position to do that. So if we must guarantee a process that throws off someone who will be able to stanch our drift into anarchy, into economic despondency, we must have a say in that political process that throw up whoever the candidate is that we ultimately will be picking one from.
Okay. All right, Nuruddin, a very big thank you. Always wonderful and exciting anytime you come to lead your voice to some of the issues that we'll talk about here. Because the issue of voters' apathy, it's very, very inimical, most especially to democratic development. In Nigeria, some persons will say that our democracy is still very nascent, and we need to ensure that we make it grow, we make it develop. But with voter apathy, there's no way that that is going to happen. So we must ensure that we participate in elections. That's what Nuruddin is talking about here. So as we glide towards 2023 presidential election or 2023 elections, you must know, first and foremost, you must accept the fact that your vote will count. Because if you don't accept that fact, then of course feelings of voters' apathy will creep in. And if it does, you're not going to do yourself any good, because you keep on complaining that X, Y, Z government is not good. So please, you must know that you have the opportunity to change the narrative, to change the government if you so desire. A very big thank you to Nuruddin for finding time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so the program is still here this morning on ITV. Now, we're going to be going on a little bit of entertainment. We've got a comedian in the house, Zoe Agu, a.k.a. Angry Pastor. That's his name now. So we're going to be having him on the show today so that he makes us laugh on a beautiful Sunday morning such as this. Thank you, Asolibi, one more time.